Welcome back to video 5. In this short video, we're going to cover finding a point on a map using coordinates, and we're also going to add all of the coordinates represented by points in your data file, in your shape file in this case. So let's go back to ArcMap. And there's a couple of ways of finding a point. Someone gives you a set of coordinates, and you can either find them using the Go to XY tool here, or you can, if you're adding points to a particular set of data, then you can go into edit mode and use essentially the same tool, and I'll show you that in a second. But first, let's just use the Go to XY tool. And what this does is it'll either go to the point or it will add a graphic point to that spot, but it won't be part of a data file. It's just graphics. It's not part of any data structure. So if somebody gives you a set of coordinates, you want to make sure that you double check on what the coordinate type is. A lot of times people just read off a string of numbers and they'll put a pause in what should be a decimal point, or a pause in what should be degrees or minutes or seconds, and don't identify them as each part of that string. And they also have to include the datum. Nowadays, it's often NAD83 or something equivalent, but if they're reading it directly off a USGS paper map, it's quite likely it's in NAD27, and you could be a quarter mile off depending on where that point is. So you have to make sure you double check. And I've found the more coordinates I take from people, it's pretty critical to go back to the original source. We get a lot of coordinates given to us by those various transponders. They come from Spot or Inmarsat or something like that, but they come from just one dispatch center in Texas, and they go through several people before they get to the field search and rescue people, and it has a high potential to get screwed up along the way. So usually what I'll do is just call Spot directly and ask them what it is, and to send a paper copy. For your guys' day-to-day use, it's not a life and death thing quite often, but you do want to double check. Anyway, so the Go to XY tool, you can enter the coordinates in any of several different formats: decimal degrees, degrees, minutes, seconds, degrees, decimal minutes, MGRS, that's a grid system, it's the military grid system, and US National Grid, which is the US grid system, and it's being advocated as the standard for ground search and rescue. Not many people use it, but in any event, that's the ultimate hope. Or UTM, which you find with a lot of the National Park Service uses UTM almost exclusively because they've set up their data structures for a lot of research, and research tends to use UTM. So let's do our first one here in decimal degrees, and we'll enter. Oh, one more thing. When you start fooling around in a particular area of a map and you misenter coordinates, you can go kiting off to China or something like that if you don't enter them correctly. So a good practice is to create a bookmark of where you are, and we'll call this Lions Reservoir, and we're at 1 to 40K, so we'll just call it 40K as the size of the map, but that's just a good identity. And using the bookmark, if we end up in southern China or something like that, we can quickly get back to this place on the map. Okay, so longitude, let's enter in -120 dot decimal 166 and 38 degrees 0.098. And there's a couple of ways you can locate this. You can use the little flash thing here, and notice the little grid comes out from the side and marks the point. You can add a point. You can add a labeled point. So let's do that. We'll add a labeled point, and it'll be labeled with the coordinates. A little hard to see, but you can actually go in and change that. Now, again, that's added as a graphic, and let's select with the select tool, and notice that it's just a little box which we can move around. Although, of course, once you move it, you've lost that exact point. Clicked, so now let's try another set of, let's put it in degrees, minutes, seconds. So let's choose degrees, minutes, seconds, and we'll enter 120 minus 120, 9 degrees, or 9 minutes, and 43.46 seconds, and a latitude of 38 degrees, 6 minutes, and 27.712 seconds. And let's just flash that to see. So that's just a little bit up reservoir, and we'll add a labeled XY point. And finally, let's do it in UTM. And for UTM, you have to know the zone reference that it's in. And in this case, even though we're in zone 11, this is zone 10, and it'll be 729.129 by 4212468. Needless to say, I looked this up ahead of time. And this is out of the area, so let's pan to it. Take a while for the map to build. Let's flash that. Zoom in. And it's the, we'll just add a point without labeling it. Or you can add a call out, which gives you that nice yellowish background. So that's actually a little better. So that's the middle of San Diego Reservoir on the Columbia campus. So let's save. Let's go to bookmarks and go back to our original work area. So we go to bookmarks and we choose Lion Reservoir 40K, and there we are pretty quickly. And the next thing, so let's do the same thing using the points. And we'll right click and we'll go into edit feature. We start editing. Let's get rid of this. Let's close this. And let's go to create feature, highlight point demo, highlight point, and right click after you've chosen point, and you're going to go to absolute XY. So you could just, let's do that again. So you could just mark the point by hand, but if you have an exact set of coordinates, again, you right click, you go to absolute XY, and you're presented with the same choice. And let's do it in decimal degrees again. -120.166, and then 38.098. And we'll establish a point there, hit enter. And go into attributes. And we'll call that Lions Reservoir 2. We already labeled one with Lions Reservoir, and we'll call this 2, or let's call it 1 as a classification. And let's unmark it. Right now it's highlighted, and I'm looking for, there we go. So right now it's covered by that graphic, so we can't as clearly see the star. So let's choose the, there it is. Let's move that. Hang on. Oh, I'm still in edit mode, so I just created another point. Hit Control Z, get rid of that point. And in any event, we won't go on any longer with that, but remember that if you're creating a feature, you can use your right click and go to absolute XY. Okay, last, we are going to stop editing and save our edits. In fact, let's just go to stop editing and it'll challenge us. Do you want to save your edits? And yes. Save the whole project. Just for grins, let's get that graphic out of the way. There we go. And okay, so you can notice in the attribute table here, bring it over to this side, even though you have all of your features in here, you don't have their coordinates. Arc knows where they are, but you can't see their coordinate values. So what you can do is go to search. We're going to use a tool here, and I put in as the search term X and Y, and so that comes up with a bunch of tools that have X and Y in the words. And so add XY coordinates. So this will add XY coordinates of your shapefile, and we'll add 2 fields with the coordinates of whatever coordinate system you set for your map in the first place. So in this case, we set it as UTM, so it'll add UTM XY values. So then hit OK. And there, oops, I just clicked to get out of it. So then it added your XY values in UTM. Now another thing you can do, this is another tool you can get, which will do the same thing, but it's a little more versatile. So this is what's called the AlaskaPak, and some programmers from the National Park Service put this together, and it has a whole bunch of useful tools, especially to researchers. So for instance, you may want those coordinates in degrees, minutes, seconds, or something like that. So if you install the AlaskaPak as a separate tool, it'll show up and it comes with instructions on how to do that. It'll show up in your toolbar, except it didn't. Oh, it's under NPS maybe, huh? Yeah, NPS Alaska. So I've got it checked, which means the tool's active. And so let's go down to add attributes, add XY coordinates. And that gives you, you have which feature class you're going to convert, and in this case it's only the point demo is the only one that can be done, and then you choose your coordinate format, and let's do it in degrees decimal minutes, and you hit OK, and with any luck, and these things don't always work, but let's see what happened here. Yep, so it also added longitude, DDM, shows it's in degrees decimal minutes. You can also do that for decimal degrees. So now you can label all of those points with their coordinate value. And I did this on a map recently where helicopter and aircraft tend to use or prefer degrees decimal minutes. And so if you give out a map for your air operations labeled with degrees decimal minutes, then the ground people can just immediately tell the aircraft the coordinates of where they should go without having to calculate it or something like that. And you can also create a label, and I'll do that here to show you how to create a label expression. And then we'll wrap up. So let's go into properties, and let's go to labels. And we're going to do this as an expression because we want to add two things. So we have label, and we want to add point X and point Y. And sometimes this gets a little complicated, so let's verify it. Okay, so that all printed out on one line, so that's not especially good. So we want to put that on a new line, and I always forget what the code, this will be in VB script. There's several types of scripting language that this is run in, and so let's load help. And I've got to look for and so help comes up with a whole bunch of different examples. And what I'm looking for is the code that'll give me a new line. So here it is here. So in Python, for instance, it's an N, but I'm going to use VB control line feed, VB CR because I'm writing, I've got this going in VB script. And so let's put that and VB, oh, I copied and pasted, so I'm just going to paste it here. Oops, that's not it. Hang on, don't you guys worry about a thing. Okay, there it is, VB CRLF, and so now let's take a look at it. There it is. But it's still, oh, and I didn't put in a space. Okay, so we got to do one more thing here. So we need a space here. So we're going to put and so any text you put in, you put quotes, you put a space, you put an end quote. And let's see if this improves our life here. Okay, so this is putting in the UTM. So okay, we're having enough fun, so let's just accept that. But you can also put in, so for instance, you can put in lat long. So you'd put a quote, you'd write LAT, you'd put an end quote, or you actually you'd put LAT and then a space and then an end quote, and then the field. And so then that would show that it's, let's hit apply. And there we are. It's a little crowded around here because, as you remember, when I was trying to get rid of that graphic, I kept clicking, and so every time I clicked, it established a point. So that's a problem. So you always have to go into your attribute table and make sure that you you haven't put in extra points or lines. Anyway, over here is a better example of how that works, and it puts in the coordinate values. But that's also how you can label things and stack the label such that it doesn't all run out in one line. Save. Okay, I think we're reaching an end here. Incidentally, I'll put this into the assignment, but these things that I'm covering now are nice to know. I think they're important as you do day-to-day GIS, but for the purposes of this class, there's nothing specific you have to do for the class. And in the assignment, I talk about the final project. And if you follow this step-by-step of exercise 7A, it has a little bit on labeling, but doesn't cover this in as much detail. Okay, I'll do one more tomorrow, and on how to find data, and also how to bring in GPX file from a track log. And so I'll see you in the next video.